Hello everybody, I'm back with another Star Wars Black Series figure, and actually this is one I've had in my back pocket for a good few months now. Ever since it was first announced, I seized on the Stap and Battle Droid exclusive from Hasbro. This is, as you may already know, because I covered it on my channel previously, I actually own the original release of this that was released, way back. I think it actually came out around the spring before the summer of the film's release, because they were quite ahead of the game when it came to getting the figures out and the merchandising out for this film. It was a crazy time for action figures. So yes, it was one of the very first releases, and it came in this special packaging, and then it was re-released later on into more standardized packaging, and that's the one I actually have, the one on the right there that you can see. And I did cover that on the channel. But I loved that figure at the time. It was so mysterious to me. I didn't know anything about the character. I remember I was given it for my birthday in anticipation of the film coming up, and it was really very exciting to me. So all these years later, to see this repackaged again, only obviously in the 6-inch scale, it hits all the right notes in terms of nostalgia for me. I absolutely love it. So without further ado, let's take a look at this packaging. Yes, they've done a fantastic job here. Although the branding, the colours are slightly different. It was green first time around, now it's red. It does have the branding from their 1999 Phantom Menace line, which is really great. It actually has the same window display as well in terms of the Stap droid there. It's in the same position, and then even the backdrop behind it, that jungle scene, is exactly what we had all those years ago. Obviously it's a swamp of Naboo, isn't it? And it just looks really cool. It looks as good now as it did then. So this is fantastic that they've actually recreated this. If we look at the side panel, we can see there is a very small image there taken from the film, no less, of the Stap Battle Droid, which is very cool. So this will look good on the shelf, although it is cut into a little bit by the window display. And then if we look at the reverse of the packaging, we have that image again writ large, of course, which looks very impressive. I think this looks really great if you want to put this on display, and of course there's a little bit of text there about the film and the character, which is lovely stuff. So the figure comes in the packaging pretty much assembled here, already attached to the Stap, which looks great. So in terms of size and proportion, this all looks to be pretty much spot on from what I can tell, and it's definitely caught the magic of that original toy that I had all those years ago. There's actually, the sculpting seems to be pretty much identical as far as I can tell. It just feels as if it's just been scaled up, actually. But both the droid and the Stap itself look absolutely fantastic. There's actually a number of different paint washes and details on here, which are really nice to see. Little scratches and silver paint where there's been dents and indentations and things like that to make it look like it's seen a bit of battle, and it looks authentic, which is fantastic. So this looks really good. And there's a lovely use of detail all over this Stap, you know, whether it's the charred ends of the gun barrels there, or whether it's the silver discs of the, well, whatever they are, you know, the silver of the handles, the silver paint here and there. It just looks really good wherever you look at it. The Stap is actually articulated as well slightly. It does have a hinge at the top of the handlebars, or the top of the Stap itself. It does tend to come apart a little bit too easily there. Mine doesn't seem to be particularly well connected, so I'm not quite sure what that does. It feels like it should be plugged in a bit more, but it can obviously lift up and down, which is great. And it's pretty much identical to that original release. The only thing that's different this time around is that the original release had an action feature whereby you could press a button on the bottom that would fire those top missiles there. That isn't the case this time around. They are firmly attached, and I don't believe they're supposed to be removed, and there's certainly no firing mechanism. Looking more closely at the Battle Droid then, I have to say this is the first time I actually have a Black Series Battle Droid in my collection, so I'm pleased to actually finally have one. This is obviously a very spindly figure. It's quite this is always a challenge, I think, with Battle Droid figures, is that they are just such a spindly design. They look quite fragile and brittle, and that doesn't translate particularly well to toys. But having said that, I do think they've done a nice job here with the paint apps. There's actually a lot of shading on this figure, which is brilliant. It desperately needs it because it is an all white or all beige sort of colouring, and there's not really much opportunity to draw much out of this. And I think Hasbro have made the use of every possibility here to really make this visually interesting and make it look authentic, which is great. So we actually see some silvers, we see some browns, beiges and things like that running throughout this figure. Now it's mostly saved for the front of the figure, but there's a little bit on the side and on the reverse as well, which is great. Of course, he does have the standard Battle Droid hands. There's not too much you can do about that. They are pretty limited, so we're not going to see any extra additional hands with this figure, unfortunately. Likewise, the same goes for the legs as well. But pleasingly, he does stand freely on his own. He doesn't need a stand hand in order to support him. There's no risk of him falling over or anything like that, which is great. Articulation is always going to be a challenge for the Battle Droid, and he does have a ball joint at the top of the neck here, which I'm struggling to get a lot out of, I've got to be honest. There's also a hinge at the base of the neck, but this doesn't seem to want to give, and I feel like if I apply too much pressure, this is going to snap, so I'm just going to leave this. There's a straight swivel at the shoulder, allowing the arm to lift all the way up. There's a hinge at the elbow, of course, the arm will hinge to about 45 degrees, and then there's another swivel at the top of the forearm there, allowing that lower forearm to spin all the way around before we have a pin swivel at the wrist. So that hand can technically hinge forwards and backwards, but mine doesn't want to give, and there is a swivel there as well. Now there's no articulation in the fingers, sadly, but we can see in the upper top of the arm, I did miss this, apologies, there is another swivel at the top of the shoulder there as well, which is good to see. And then finally for the legs, we have a swivel at the top of the hips there, allowing the leg to kick all the way forward and all the way back, which is pretty impressive. And then we have another hinge this time at the knee, allowing that lower leg to kick all the way back, which is great. And then we have a hinge at the ankle, allowing that foot to bend forwards and backwards. And there's also a swivel at the top of the ankle there as well. In terms of accessories, the Battle Droid is a little bit light. He does come with this antennae, which can plug directly into the back of his shoulder, or he can plug his backpack into his back and have the antennae coming out of the backpack instead. He also comes with his blaster, and all of these pieces are very nicely sculpted and very well painted. In particular, the blaster, which has a lot of silver paint on here to make it look, used and worn, which is fantastic. So in terms of adding the antennae or the backpack, of course, there are those peg holes there on his back, so you can just slide them in, and they just slot in nice and comfortably. They're very snug fit, which is great, and they look pretty cool, I have to say. And you can have two sort of distinct looks there for the character, which is pretty cool. I like this. And despite not having the most robust grip in the world, he actually holds his blaster very comfortably and very snugly, and there's no risk of this coming out of his hand. And I have to say, it looks pretty cool. Pleasingly, he can also grip it with both hands if you persevere, and it looks the part. So I have to say, all in all, I think they've done a really nice job with this Battle Droid. I really like the overall presentation and the paint apps that they've applied. It really helps this figure an awful lot, I think. And then, of course, when you combine that with the Stap itself, I think this makes a really nice, interesting display piece. I think it looks really quite colourful, it's quite eye-catching, and makes something more of the Battle Droid. My feeling has always been the Battle Droids were slightly misjudged in the film. They just seem a little bit too feeble, I think, whereas this makes it look a little bit more robust, makes it look more of a legitimate threat, I think, and it's certainly a nice addition to have in this year of all years, of course, being the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace, a very welcome addition. So for me, all things being equal, this is a 4-star release. I think it's really cool. It's pretty much on the money, really. What else could they have done? Well, perhaps they could have, given us something a little bit extra. I'm not entirely sure what that would be, but maybe there's some additional accessories they could have included. But all in all, for the most part, this is very successful, and I think they've done a really nice job. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.